Hello, and welcome to Midnight Affairs Tales. Your support means everything to us. We'd love to know, which geographical location are you joining from today? At home on the go, share with us below now. Let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Jake Callahan stared at the welcome home sign in his duffel bag, the red Sharpie ink still smelling fresh. It had taken him 10 minutes to make, but 10 months to dream about. His boots hit the driveway with silent pride. His heart raced. It was Valentine's Day. He was supposed to be on base in Syria. But Jake came home early, with one plan: surprise his wife, Emily, and scoop up their 4-year-old son Mason into his arms. He never expected the house lights to be off. He never expected the neighbor to hand him an envelope with shaking hands. He never expected the words, "I thought you knew." "I'm so sorry." Inside the envelope, photos. Emily, half naked, smiling, wrapped in another man's arms. A man Jake recognized. Ethan, his best friend since boot camp. His best man at their wedding. And beside the photo, scribbled in the same coward's handwriting, "You're not the kid's real dad." Jake stood motionless. Wind whistled through the empty yard. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was punishment. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He smiled. The kind of smile that scared people in war zones. Because he knew exactly what he was going to do. Jake looked at the front door. His hand brushed against his dog tags. "Happy Valentine's Day, Emily," he muttered. Then he walked inside. Question is, how do you destroy someone without laying a single hand on them? Before we move ahead, I just want to say, your support truly means everything. We're building something special here, and our next big goal is reaching 10,000 incredible subscribers. If you're feeling the emotions in these stories, imagine what's still to come. Subscribe now, be part of this amazing journey, and let's keep growing together. Your one click can make a real difference. Let's continue the story. Jake waited until 3 a.m. Emily came home smelling like wine and cheap cologne, stumbling over her heels as she whispered into her phone, then froze when she saw him sitting calmly on the couch. "Jake." Her eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" Jake stood, walked past her, and handed her a white envelope. "What's this?" she asked, voice trembling. "Open it." She did. Inside, DNA test results. Mason wasn't his. Her knees buckled. She sat down like the floor vanished beneath her. "Jake, wait, please. I can explain. It just happened. You just happened to sleep with my best friend? For how long?" His voice was calm. Too calm. "Only twice. I swear, twice is all it took to destroy everything." Emily broke down, sobbing. "You're still his dad, Jake. You raised him." Jake's jaw clenched. His hands didn't shake. His eyes didn't blink. "I went through hell in Syria, Emily. Lost brothers. Held men dying in my arms. And I came back for my family." He paused. "Turns out, my family died while I was still fighting." She tried to reach for his hand. He pulled away. "You don't get to touch me. Not now. Not ever again." Emily gasped. "You can't take Mason from me." Jake leaned in close, his voice low. "I'm not taking him from you. I'm taking me from this. You broke it. I'm just walking away from the wreckage." He walked out the room, leaving her sobbing. The next morning, Jake made pancakes for Mason. "Daddy, you're back." Mason ran into his arms. Jake lifted him up, holding tighter than usual. Emily watched from the hallway, eyes bloodshot. "Jake, can we talk?" she whispered. He kissed Mason's forehead. "Go watch your cartoons, bud." Then turned to her, cold. "We're talking. You're just not hearing it yet." She followed him into the kitchen. "I messed up, but we can fix this. You don't fix betrayal. You live with the scar." Jake opened his laptop, pulled up emails. Surveillance footage. Her texts. A digital file titled, "Divorce Strategy." Emily's face turned pale. "You planned this." Jake's voice didn't rise. "You lit the match." "I just read the evacuation manual." Her lip trembled. "You're scaring me." "Good," he said, packing Mason's lunchbox. "Fear tends to teach better than love ever did with you." She tried to gild him. "You're going to tear Mason's life apart." Jake slammed the fridge shut. "No. You already did. I'm just keeping the pieces safe now." His lawyer's number was on speed dial. Military courts favored soldiers, especially betrayed ones. But this wasn't just legal. It was personal. Jake wasn't here for rage. He was here for justice. And justice was just getting started. Jake booked the restaurant 3 hours before dinner. Same place they had their first anniversary. Same booth. Same roses. Emily thought it was a peace offering. "Thank you for this," she said, sliding into the booth, dressed in red. "I didn't think you'd still want to try." Jake smiled. "I figured we should do something memorable." The waiter came. Jake ordered her favorite wine. She looked hopeful, maybe even smug. Jake studied her face like a soldier watching the enemy's every move. She had no idea what was coming. When dessert arrived, so did the envelope. "Happy Valentine's Day," he said, sliding it across the table. Emily blinked. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside, photos of her and Ethan. Texts, dates, receipts, hotel reservations, audio clips. Emily stared at them, hands trembling. "How did you?" Jake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You didn't cover your tracks very well. You really thought I wouldn't find out?" Tears welled up. "Jake, it was a mistake. I was lonely. You were gone for so long. I was deployed, not on vacation." She reached for his hand. He pulled back. "Do you know what I saw overseas? Men die. Children scream. Sand soaked in blood. And I held on because I thought I had a family to come back to." She sobbed. "We can fix this." "We?" "No. You broke it. Alone." People at nearby tables stared. Jake stood. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer. And the army. You really should have read the military marriage code before you played house with my best friend." He dropped the napkin on the table. The roses stayed on the seat. The liar sat alone. And Jake walked out. Jake waited in the parking lot of a small gym. He knew Ethan's routine, knew his car, knew the gate code. Hell, he had taught it to him. At 6:12 p.m., Ethan walked out, towel slung around his neck, smiling at something on his phone. Jake stepped into his path. Ethan froze. "Jake." "Hey, brother." Jake's voice was casual. Too casual. Ethan's smile faded. "Look, man, before you say anything." Jake raised a hand. "Let's skip the part where you pretend this was complicated." Ethan swallowed hard. "It just happened. One night. Then again. I was drunk. You were best man at my wedding. You held my son at the hospital. You called me brother for 10 years. And you slept with my wife." Jake stepped closer. "You could have told me. Any time. But you let me come home to a lie." Ethan's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to get caught," Jake snapped. "You didn't mean to deal with consequences. But that's where we are now." Ethan glanced around. "Are you going to hit me?" Jake leaned in. "I could. But no. I want you walking around every damn day knowing you lost the only people who ever had your back." Jake turned to leave. "Oh, and by the way, Command's getting the whole story. You're not going to be in uniform much longer." Ethan stammered. "Jake, please." But Jake was already walking away. He didn't need to break Ethan's nose. He broke his future instead. Jake sat across from a military divorce attorney named Marissa Lang. Sharp suit. Sharper mind. She flipped through the evidence like a surgeon before an operation. "This is solid. DNA tests. Photos. Confession. You were married under federal jurisdiction, which means she's in violation of military marriage code. This isn't just adultery. It's fraud." Jake nodded. "I want full custody. I want her out of the house. I want to keep my benefits clean. And I want this done by the book." Marissa leaned back. "You've been planning this. I've been betrayed enough to know walking in blind only gets you hurt." She admired that. "You play chess, Mr. Callahan? I play war." They filed the papers that day. Emergency custody request. Financial freeze. Formal adultery claim to the chain of command. Jake didn't flinch. Not when he signed. Not when he handed over evidence. Not when he saw Emily's name on the papers. That night, he stood by Mason's bed. "You'll never know what she took from me, buddy. But I promise she'll never take you." He kissed his son's forehead. His hand lingered there, as if shielding him from the storm outside. Tomorrow, the first letter would hit her inbox. By the end of the week, she'd be cut off from the bank, the car, and the house. By next month, Jake wouldn't just be a betrayed husband. He'd be the one who taught betrayal what regret feels like. The flash drive clicked into place. Jake sat alone in his garage, the one place untouched by lies. The computer screen flickered on, casting a cold blue hue across his face as he opened folder after folder. Names, dates, locations organized like a military op. Because that's what this was now. Operation Take Back My Life. He clicked a video. Grainy footage. Emily and Ethan, hotel hallway. They kissed like they had nothing to lose. Jake watched, jaw locked, not even blinking. He clicked another file. Screenshots of texts. Emily, I wish he'd stay overseas. Ethan, he doesn't deserve you. He's too stiff. Emily, I only feel alive when I'm with you. Jake's fingers curled into fists on the desk. He opened one more file. A photo from the day Mason was born. Ethan at the hospital, smiling, holding the baby. Jake leaned in closer. A new, cruel realization hit him like a brick to the chest. Ethan had held his son. No, the boy Jake believed was his, before he did. His breath shook. The betrayal ran deeper than sex. It was theft. Of time. Of firsts. Of fatherhood. Jake pulled out a yellow folder. Inside, bank records. Emily's name linked to his second account. Monthly withdrawals. Expensive hotel bookings. Trips listed as girls' weekends that never happened. He sorted the documents into sections: custody, adultery, fraud, timeline. Every lie had a paper trail. And Jake followed it like breadcrumbs through a haunted forest. His phone buzzed. A message from Marissa. We're greenlit. We serve her in 48 hours. Jake stared at the screen. She would not see it coming. Because real revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. Surgical. Permanent. Emily stood at the kitchen counter, sipping her morning coffee when a knock came at the door. She opened it in pajamas, face half covered in a messy bun. Emily Callahan, a man in a navy blue blazer, asked. Yes. He handed her an envelope and stepped back. You've been served. The door shut slowly as she stared at the papers. Divorce. Custody. Fraud. All signed by Jake. A low gasp escaped her lips. Her hands shook. She flipped through the pages, eyes scanning line after devastating line. Effective immediately, all joint accounts frozen. Petition for full custody. Allegations of adultery. Military code citation. She dropped the papers. No. No. She scrambled to her phone, calling Jake. No answer. Again. Nothing. She burst into the bedroom and checked her banking app. Zero balances. The savings account locked. The credit card declined. Even her car lease had been transferred to Jake's name. Then the real panic set in. She dialed Ethan. Straight to voicemail. She screamed, hurling her phone across the room. Jake had dismantled her life in a single, silent strike. Later that night, she tried to confront him during a custody handoff. Jake stood calm at the door, Mason already buckled in the car. You did this to me, she cried, mascara streaking her cheeks. No, Emily. You did this to yourself. You think you're better than me? You're not perfect. Jake leaned in close. No, but I never lied. Never cheated. And I didn't destroy my family for a cheap thrill. Emily sobbed. You're taking everything. Jake's voice dropped. No, I'm taking back everything you stole. Then he got in the car and drove off, leaving Emily alone in the dark, with nothing but her own echo bouncing off the walls. The military base wasn't just a place of order, it was Jake's fortress. Inside the JAG office, he handed over a thick manila folder to the legal officer. Uniformed, stern, precise. Every document in the folder had teeth. Sergeant Callahan, the officer said, scanning the evidence. You're filing an adultery charge under Article 134? Yes, sir. Against my wife and another active duty member, Sergeant Ethan Ward. The officer's brow lifted. You've done your homework. Jake sat straight. I did my time in the field. I know how to prep for war. The next few hours moved like a war room briefing. Dates aligned. Photos matched. Witness statements filed. Jake gave access to financials and recordings. Every box checked. Emily never thought sleeping with a soldier could cost her benefits, housing, medical coverage, but it could and would. Back home, Jake waited for the second hit to land. That afternoon, Base Command notified Emily she had 24 hours to vacate on-base housing. Her access to the base was revoked. Her spousal ID deactivated. At 3:17 p.m., she called him. He let it ring. At 3:19, she sent a text, "You're ruining my life." Jake stared at it. Ruining? No. He was restoring balance. He deleted the message. At night, as Mason fell asleep on his chest, Jake stared at the ceiling, calm but not peaceful. Not yet. Because there was one thing left, custody. And Emily was about to learn, the law may forgive a cheater, but it never forgets a liar. Jake stood before the family court building, holding Mason's tiny hand as the morning sun filtered through gray clouds. Inside, Emily sat at the plaintiff's table, freshly made up but visibly fraying. Her lawyer whispered, but her eyes stayed fixed on Jake, pleading, then sharpening with bitterness when he did not look back. Judge Monroe entered, stern and unamused. "We're here regarding custody of minor Mason Callahan." Jake's lawyer, Marissa, stood. "Your Honor, my client is a decorated active-duty soldier with an impeccable record. He has raised Mason since birth under the belief he was the biological father. Despite discovering recent infidelity and proof of non-paternity, he continues to provide stability, support, and emotional care for the child." Emily's attorney fired back. "Mrs. Callahan is the biological mother. She made a mistake, but she's still the child's mother and deserves shared custody." Jake didn't flinch. He reached into his folder and slid a page forward, Emily's toxicology report. Gasps. Emily's smile vanished. Marissa continued, "We've submitted evidence of substance misuse, financial deception, and psychological instability, Your Honor. We're not seeking to punish Mrs. Callahan. We're protecting Mason." Emily shot up. "This is a setup. He's turning everything against me." Judge Monroe raised a hand. "Mrs. Callahan, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt." She sat, red-faced and breathing hard. Later, outside the courtroom, Jake knelt beside Mason. "You okay, buddy?" Mason nodded. "Are we going home?" Jake smiled. "Yeah, we are." As they walked to the car, Jake didn't look back. He didn't have to. The judge would decide soon. But one thing was already clear. Emily had just lost her grip, and Jake had only tightened his. Emily's world began to shrink by the hour. The salon job she held part-time called to pause her shifts. Word had spread. People whispered. Mothers at Mason's old daycare stopped replying to her messages. Ethan had gone silent too. His name was now linked to an official investigation, pending a dishonorable discharge. Her phone rang. It was her sister. "You okay?" she asked flatly. "No. Everyone's turning against me. Jake's poisoning everyone. He's making me look like a monster." There was a pause. Then her sister sighed. "You lied to him for 4 years, Em. What did you expect?" Emily's voice cracked. "I made a mistake." "No. You made a choice. You just thought he'd be too soft to fight back." Click. Emily dropped the phone on the floor and screamed. Alone. No family. No friends. No support. Meanwhile, Jake stood in the base rec room with fellow officers. One approached him quietly. "Heard about Ethan. Command's all over it." "Man's done." Jake nodded. "Wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability." The officer grinned. "Still felt good though, right?" Jake didn't answer. He didn't need to. His eyes said it all. Back home, he tucked Mason into bed. The boy held his hand tighter than usual. "Are you gonna stay, Daddy?" Jake looked at him, voice steady. "Always." But that night, when Jake sat alone on the porch, his hands trembled. The rage was leaving, and something heavier was settling in, grief. For what he thought his life was. For a marriage that died before he even knew it was sick. He closed his eyes. It was almost time to let go. But not yet. The Reddit post exploded overnight. Jake never planned to go public. But a friend convinced him to post anonymously in a military support forum. A raw, detailed account of betrayal. The DNA test. The affair. The quiet revenge. Names redacted, but the story spread like fire. It hit the front page in hours. Thousands of comments. Thousands of messages. I lived this too. You gave me strength. You are not alone. Jake read each one with a growing sense of weight. This wasn't just his battle anymore. It was a storm he'd walked through, and now others were following behind. Emily found out the next morning. She saw herself in the story, even with the names removed. She slammed her laptop shut, chest rising and falling in panic. The world now knew, even if they didn't know her. She was the villain in someone's justice story, and she could not control it. Later, Jake received a message request. It was from an officer who said he'd once lost his kids in a similar betrayal, and now had the tools to fight back. Jake typed one sentence in reply. Then make sure she never does this to someone else. That night, Jake stood outside with a quiet strength. He didn't post the story for likes. He posted it so someone else wouldn't be blindsided like he was. And while Emily's name wasn't in the post, the weight of it sat heavy on her shoulders because everyone knew someone like her. And for the first time, she couldn't lie her way out. Jake wore his uniform to court that morning, not because he wanted to intimidate, but because it reminded him of who he still was, even after everything that had been taken. Emily arrived late, avoiding his eyes, wearing all black like she was the widow of a marriage she murdered. Her lawyer followed close behind, trying to shuffle documents that didn't stand a chance against the mountain of evidence Marissa carried in her briefcase. Judge Monroe sat higher today, taller, like justice was sitting just a bit more upright. Sergeant Callahan, he began, we're here for continued custody review and potential fraud considerations. Are you ready to proceed? Yes, Your Honor, Jake said clearly. The courtroom was quiet, the kind of silence that lives just before a verdict. Marissa opened with a calm but brutal presentation. Text logs showing Emily mocking Jake behind his back, receipts of her using joint funds for hotel getaways, screenshots of her affair being planned during Mason's birthday week. Then came the witness, a former co-worker of Emily's. She testified about the drinking, the erratic mood swings, the whispered stories of sneaking around. Emily turned red. Her hands trembled under the table. When it was her turn to speak, she cried. She blamed loneliness. She claimed depression. I didn't mean for things to happen this way. Jake didn't interrupt. He didn't flinch. Then came the final blow, audio from Ethan's voicemail, unknowingly recorded. She told me the kid wasn't mine either. I don't even know what the truth is anymore. The courtroom froze. Emily covered her mouth. Even her lawyer looked blindsided. Jake said nothing, because now, everything was saying it for him. The hearing adjourned, but the war was still in motion. Emily ran after Jake outside the courthouse. Jake, please, she shouted, heels clicking over the pavement. He stopped. Don't do this, she begged. You're trying to erase me from Mason's life. No, Jake said, turning to face her. You already did that. You just didn't notice. Her mascara streaked again. She always cried when she lost control. I was broken. You were never there. I was fighting a war overseas. You started one at home. She reached for his arm. I can be better. Just give me a chance. Jake stared her down with the kind of look that ends things. You buried the man who trusted you. What's left here isn't yours to fix. He walked away again. But back at home, Jake wasn't as composed. He poured a drink, something rare for him, and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. He wasn't broken anymore, but he was tired in a way that even sleep couldn't fix. Mason walked in, rubbing his eyes. Dad? You okay? Jake dropped to one knee and pulled him in. Yeah, buddy. Just had a long day. Mason looked up. You'll always be my dad, right? Jake held back tears. Always. That night, Jake burned a copy of the audio file. You didn't need it anymore. The system would handle what was left. But somewhere in that quiet night, a subtle shift happened. Jake wasn't just surviving the fallout anymore. He was finally, truly, beginning to move forward. Emily's image was crumbling fast. The military spouse groups had caught wind of the situation. Screenshots. Speculation. A few confirmed connections leaked the details. While Jake never said a word, others did. And the story built its own legs. Her phone buzzed constantly. Some messages full of pity. Others, venom. One text read, "Hope the thrill was worth losing everything." She shut off her phone, blocked dozens, deleted social apps. But the digital world never really forgets. Meanwhile, Jake was back in base training mode. Early runs. Fresh starts. Discipline again, not to distract, but to rebuild. At the gym, a junior soldier asked, "Sir, that story going around Reddit, is it really you?" Jake paused, wiped his brow, and said, "Parts of it. But it's not about me. It's about not letting lies ruin your future." He walked away, but the soldier looked after him with something rare in this world: respect. Back home, Jake cleaned out the last of Emily's boxes. He didn't open the letters, didn't read the cards. He bagged them all and left them by the mailbox for her to collect, if she even had the courage to show up. He walked through the house slowly that night, touching the walls, straightening picture frames, folding Mason's laundry, not with sadness, with ownership. This wasn't a broken home anymore. It was his home, the one he fought for, the one he was rebuilding brick by brick, moment by moment. And no matter how loud the betrayal had been, his peace was louder. The therapy room smelled like cedar wood and old books. A soft ticking clock filled the quiet space between breaths. Jake sat stiffly on the edge of the couch. His boots were polished, his voice silent. Across from him, Dr. Harlan waited patiently. "You do not have to speak. But you came here for something." Jake's fingers interlaced tightly. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from years of holding it in. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know what to do with the rage." Dr. Harlan nodded. "It is earned. That does not mean it needs to stay." Jake looked down. "She didn't just lie to me. She rewrote my entire life behind my back. Every memory, every smile from Mason. Now I wonder if it was built on truth or lies." "Do you still love the boy?" Jake looked up sharply. "He's my son. That never changed." Dr. Harlan leaned forward. "Then the truth does not erase what you built. It just reminds you who built it alone." Silence followed. Jake's jaw clenched. But then he breathed. Slow. Deep. Like exhaling 10 years of guilt. He finally said, "I don't want to be angry anymore. I want to be free." Dr. Harlan smiled slightly. "Then you were already doing it." Later, Jake walked out into the parking lot, the sky gray but calm. He didn't feel lighter, but he felt clearer. And for the first time, it wasn't about revenge. It was about healing on his terms. Jake hadn't planned on finding it. He was sorting old boxes in the garage, clearing out what remained of her. In a shoebox labeled Mason, baby stuff, beneath hospital bracelets and baby socks, he found a flash drive. No label. He plugged it into his laptop out of curiosity. The first file, an audio memo. Emily's voice. "I don't think Jake will ever find out. Mason's is now. Ethan doesn't even want to be involved. If anyone asks, I'll just say we were trying when I got pregnant. I can twist that. Jake's too loyal to question it." Jake froze. The words sliced through him sharper than any knife. She didn't just lie to survive. She manipulated his loyalty to protect her betrayal. He played it again, this time not for emotion, but for clarity. He saved it to a secure file. This was more than betrayal. It was premeditated deception, enough to prove intentional fraud in a custody court. Jake stood from the desk, knuckles white. Not out of rage this time, but determination. She had gambled with his life. Now he held the final piece of the puzzle. That night, he emailed the file to Marissa. Her reply was immediate. "This changes everything." Jake stared at the ceiling as Mason slept beside him, unaware of the storm his father was navigating. This wasn't just about custody now. It was about making sure Emily never got the chance to manipulate again. She didn't just break trust, she weaponized it. Now, Jake had the truth on record. And truth hits harder than vengeance ever could. Emily sat across from her new lawyer, eyes swollen, hands fidgeting. "He found the memo," she said softly. The lawyer rubbed his temples. "Do you understand how damaging that is? You literally admitted to deceiving your husband about the child's paternity. That's not just bad optics. That's strategic fraud." Emily snapped. "I didn't think he'd go this far. He was always soft. Forgiving. Yeah? Well, he's not anymore." She pulled her coat tighter. I need to win him back. Maybe if I tell him I'm pregnant. The lawyer blinked. You are. Emily nodded slowly. 6 weeks. And it's not Jake's? She shook her head. It's no? Someone else. Then that lie will bury you in court. She leaned in, desperate. Not if I spin it. If I say it happened after the separation. If I cry, if I show I'm trying, he'll believe it. The lawyer leaned back. He's already filed for full custody. You've lost your spousal benefits. You're hanging on by a thread, Emily. At this point, trying to spin anything will just prove he's right about you. Her face flushed with heat. Panic. Rage. Desperation. She stormed out of the office, dialing Jake again. It went straight to voicemail. She left a message anyway. Jake. I'm pregnant. I thought you should know. I'm not asking for anything. I don't want to be alone in this. She hung up and stared at her shaking hands. But Jake wasn't buying it. Because lies don't work on men who've already buried the truth and walked away from it. The courtroom was colder than usual. Jake adjusted his uniform as he sat down, Mason's school backpack beside his feet. Marissa leaned over and whispered, We're set. The memo. The financial trail. We've got this. Across the room, Emily sat in silence. No makeup, no fake tears this time. Her belly just barely showing. A new life, from another man, as part of a last-minute sympathy strategy. But it wasn't working. Not anymore. Judge Monroe walked in and the room stood. His face was unreadable as he reviewed the files in front of him. When he spoke, it wasn't to debate, it was to decide. I have reviewed the submitted materials, including a voice recording that indicates clear, premeditated deception involving paternity, financial misrepresentation, and custody obstruction. Emily lowered her head. Jake sat still. Steady. In light of these findings, full legal and physical custody of the minor, Mason Callahan, is awarded to Sergeant Jake Callahan. All visitation will be supervised until further review. As for spousal benefits, Mrs. Callahan is disqualified under Section 508 of the Military Code. Emily's hands flew to her face. Jake didn't smile. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about protecting. As they left the courtroom, Emily called after him. Jake, please, can we talk? He paused, looked her straight in the eyes. We already did. You just weren't listening. And with that, he took Mason's hand and walked toward the sunlit doors. Behind him, Emily sat in a wooden chair that suddenly felt like a prison cell. 3 days later, Jake received a knock at his door. It wasn't Emily. It was a woman, mid-30s, serious eyes, business attire. Sergeant Callahan? Yes. She handed him a sealed envelope. I'm from the Department of Child and Family Services. We received a mandatory referral regarding the child Emily Callahan is currently carrying. Jake opened the envelope slowly. Inside, documentation. A statement from the alleged father, a bartender in Miami. He had filed an affidavit denying paternity. Said Emily claimed the baby might still be Jake's. Jake's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. The woman nodded. We're aware. But she's filed for dependent support based on your military benefits. Jake's stomach turned. Emily wasn't just lying again. She was trying to name him as the father, on paper. For money. For benefits. He stepped back, eyes hard. I want to file a preemptive legal block. No connection to that child. None. The woman nodded. We'll help with that. But be advised, she's claiming you two reconciled briefly before the divorce filing. She's trying to close the timeline gap. Jake stared blankly at the wall for a moment. It wasn't over. She had lost the battle. But now, she was trying to rewrite the war. Jake called Marissa immediately. She's using the baby. Trying to force support by forging a narrative. Marissa replied fast. Then we moved just as fast. They filed a restraining order. Preemptive DNA rejection. Medical records. Timeline proof. Every hotel booking and phone ping Jake had from that period. Within 48 hours, the motion was in place. Emily showed up at his apartment the next day, arms folded, belly visible. You're not even gonna ask about the baby? Jake didn't invite her in. I already did. The court answered. She laughed, dry and bitter. You think this makes you the hero? You abandoned me. Jake stepped outside, door opened just enough to let the light cast a long shadow between them. No. You abandoned us the minute you brought him into our lives. Emily's face fell. Her lips quivered, but the mask cracked. There was no real sorrow, just the panic of someone watching all her weapons fail. You'll regret this, she hissed. That child might have needed you. Jake's voice didn't shake. I'll help a child who's mine, but not one used as bait. He closed the door, locking it quietly behind him. And that was the moment it clicked. She wasn't fighting for family. She was fighting for control. But Jake had finally taken that away for good. Emily paced her apartment like a caged animal. The windows were drawn shut, the air thick with the smell of old coffee and desperation. On the kitchen table sat a crumpled envelope, her latest bank statement. Balance, under $100. Her final support check was already gone. Food, rent, maternity care. She picked up her phone again and stared at Jake's contact. No new messages. No missed calls. Nothing. That night, she called the one person she hadn't yet begged, Ethan. But his number had been disconnected. She tried social media. His profile was gone, as if he had vanished off the face of the earth. The silence was louder than any answer. So she crafted a plan. The next day, Jake received a legal notice. Emily was filing for shared custody of Mason, claiming she had been rehabilitated, emotionally stable, and actively seeking to reunite the family unit for the sake of the child. Jake showed it to Marissa. She's bluffing, she said. We've got more leverage than she realizes. Want me to end this? Jake looked out the window. Mason was playing in the backyard with the neighbor's dog, laughing whole. No. Let her talk. Let her show her true self again. Marissa smirked. Let her dig her own grave? Jake nodded. Exactly. It was early morning when Jake received a message from an anonymous email address. One video file. No subject line. He hesitated, then hit play. It was Ethan, drunk, slouched in a hotel room, speaking to someone off camera. She said the kid was mine, then said he wasn't. Said we could raise him anyway. That Jake wouldn't know. She even said she'd guilt trip him if he found out. Jake leaned back in his chair. His jaw tightened, but his heart didn't race. This wasn't rage. It was clarity. The footage confirmed everything. The manipulation wasn't passive. It was coordinated. Jake forwarded the video to Marissa. Use this if she pushes for custody. He then did something unexpected. He sent the video to Ethan's former commanding officer. 2 days later, he got the news. Ethan had been dishonorably discharged, not just for the affair, but for obstruction, fraud, and multiple violations of military conduct. Jake stared at the message for a long moment, then closed it. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt done. One by one, the people who tore his life apart were falling. And he wasn't throwing punches. He was simply telling the truth. Emily stood outside the courthouse in the rain, coat soaked through, hair a tangled mess. She hadn't brought a lawyer this time. Couldn't afford one. Inside, the judge reviewed the file. The memo. The tape. The financial records. Ethan's discharge. The paternity fraud. The restraining order. Her voice broke as she tried to speak. I made mistakes, but I'm not a bad mother. The judge interrupted gently. Ms. Callahan, there's a difference between making mistakes and manipulating others to serve yourself. This is not a case of a mother fighting for her child. This is a case of a woman using her child as a weapon. Emily's eyes welled up. I need him. I don't have anyone else. The judge didn't waver. That is not Mason's burden to carry. Outside the courtroom, Jake didn't wait for her. She found him in the parking lot anyway. I lost everything, she whispered. Jake didn't even look at her. You didn't lose it. You sold it for a lie. Is there anything left of me in your heart? She asked, her voice barely audible. Jake turned just slightly. Yes. A scar. Then he got into his truck. As the engine started, Emily stood still, drenched, abandoned not by Jake, but by every lie that had finally turned on her. The new town wasn't fancy, just quiet. Jake chose it for one reason, peace. Mason clutched his little backpack as they walked into a new school building. His fingers tightened around Jake's wrist like he was afraid to let go. You'll be okay, Jake said, kneeling beside him. It's a new place, but you're still you. And I'll be right outside when the bell rings. Mason nodded, but didn't speak. A teacher approached, Miss Hartley. Early 30s. Kind eyes. She crouched beside Mason with a warm smile. Welcome, Mason. We saved a spot just for you. Jake watched as his son followed her, one step at a time. A little slower than the other kids, but still forward. Back at home, the walls were bare, but the air felt different. No yelling, no tension, just Jake, unpacking slowly, deliberately. He placed a photo of Mason on the mantel, just him and the boy, fishing from last summer. No Emily, no lies, just truth. That night, they ate on the floor, no furniture yet, but Mason laughed for the first time in weeks. Jake smiled. You like it here? Mason nodded with a mouthful of mac and cheese. It's better. Jake looked at him for a long moment. So was he. Jake had kept the leather-bound journal since the day the DNA results came in. At first, it was for notes, dates, names, strategy. A tool for war. But now, it was for legacy. He sat at the desk, writing under a warm lamp while Mason slept. Son, one day you'll read this and understand why I did what I did. Why I walked away from lies instead of letting them poison us both. Why I fought not to hurt your mother, but to protect your truth. He flipped back through the pages. You may not carry my blood, but you carry my name, my values, my strength, and you will never be unwanted, not while I breathe. He paused, the pen shaking slightly. This part wasn't strategy. This was soul. I chose you. I fought for you. I stayed for you. And even if the world tried to tell me otherwise, you will always be my son. Jake closed the journal and placed it in a lockbox. One day, Mason would read it when he was old enough. It wasn't revenge that defined the man writing those pages. It was love. The kind that never needed biology to be real. The call came at 6:42 a.m. Jake answered with instinctive caution. This is Callahan. Sergeant Callahan, this is Officer Redford from County PD. We're calling to notify you that Emily Callahan was arrested this morning. Jake sat up. For what? Forgery and prescription fraud. She attempted to refill controlled medication under a false identity. Yours, actually. Silence. The officer continued. Because your name was used, protocol says we notify you. You're not being charged, quite the opposite. We'll likely need your testimony to close the case. Jake hung up and sat in the quiet. There wasn't anger anymore. No fire left for her. Just sadness. He stared out the window at the early sun creeping through blinds. The same woman who once stood beside him on wedding day, smiling like she meant it, was now sitting in a holding cell trying to steal his name again. That evening, as he sat with Mason watching a movie, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tell him I'm sorry. I know he'll never hear it from me. But I needed you to. Jake didn't reply. He deleted the message, leaned into the couch, and wrapped an arm around his son. Some apologies don't deserve responses. Some endings don't need revisiting. Because sometimes the most powerful closure is choosing not to look back. The paperwork sat on Jake's kitchen table like a war medal. Finalized. Stamped. Permanent. Full legal and physical custody. Mason was his, by law, by heart, by every ounce of truth left in the world. Jake signed the last page slowly. Marissa's voice echoed through the speakerphone. It's over. She has no claim, no visitation, no influence. You did it, Jake. He let the pen rest on the paper for a moment before responding. No, we did it. Marissa chuckled. You held the line. Most people would have broken. You didn't. Jake looked over his shoulder at the living room, where Mason was sprawled out drawing spaceships on the floor. The boy didn't know what had just happened. He didn't need to. That night, Jake cooked spaghetti, Mason's favorite. They sat at the small table they'd built together from a flat-pack box. Cheap wood, but it felt like gold. Guess what? Jake said as he twirled pasta on his fork. The court said you can stay with me. Forever. Mason looked up. Forever ever? Jake smiled. Forever ever. Mason grinned, then went back to eating. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was everything. Jake stood shirtless in front of the mirror, a towel slung over his shoulder, fresh out of the shower, clean shave, no distractions. His reflection looked older, not in years, in weight, in earned silence. For a long moment, he just stared, then reached into the drawer and pulled out an old photo, his wedding day. Emily in white, him in uniform, both smiling, both lying in their own ways. He stared for 10 seconds. Then, without a word, ripped the photo in half and dropped it in the trash. He wasn't angry anymore. He was done. Later that day, he took Mason to the park. It was Saturday, sun high, air cool. Jake watched his son chase a kite while other families bustled around them. A little girl fell from the monkey bars and started crying. Jake instinctively moved to help, but before he reached her, Mason beat him to it, helping her up, brushing off her knees. Jake froze. There it was. Not blood, not DNA, character, empathy. The boy he raised was becoming a good man, and that was the only reflection Jake needed now. It was a plain envelope, no return address, just his name written in rushed, familiar handwriting. He opened it carefully. Inside, one page. I'm leaving the state. Starting over. I know I don't deserve peace, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to find it. Not to fix things, just to stop destroying them. Tell Mason I'm sorry. I don't expect him to forgive me. I just hope he gets to grow up without the weight I carried. Emily Jake stood still, letter in hand. No tears, no reaction, just a slow exhale. He folded the letter once and tucked it away, not to keep her memory alive, but to remind himself that closure doesn't need applause. It just needs acceptance. Later that night, Mason asked, "Did Mom write to us?" Jake nodded. She said goodbye. Is she gone? Jake looked at his son, then out the window toward the dark skyline. Yeah, she's gone. Mason didn't ask more. He just leaned against his dad's arm and watched cartoons until he fell asleep. Jake sat there, holding the boy with one arm, letter in the other. Sometimes goodbyes aren't loud. Sometimes they're the most peaceful thing you'll ever hear. Jake was wiping down his truck when a number flashed on his phone. Unfamiliar. Out of state. He ignored it. 10 minutes later, a voicemail notification buzzed. Out of curiosity or instinct, he played it. Jake. It's Ethan. The voice was dry, defeated. I'm not calling to beg. I don't even know why I'm leaving this message. Maybe because you're the only person who ever believed in me before I turned into someone I don't recognize. There was a long pause. I'm homeless. I've got nothing. I burned every bridge. But I still remember Mason calling me Uncle E. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Jake stood there, phone against his ear, the sunset burning across the sky like a slow apology. He didn't call back. Instead, he went inside, pulled out a box, and tossed Ethan's old photos in the trash. Every single one. Gone. The past wasn't worth burning anymore. It just wasn't worth keeping. A month passed. Then the second letter arrived. Different tone. Calmer handwriting. I'm in rehab. I relapsed hard after losing everything. I don't say that to make you feel bad. I say it because I finally see it now. I built a house of lies and called it love. I see Mason in my dreams. I hear his laugh. I miss him, but I won't come back. I just wanted you to know. You were the best part of me. And I ruined it. Emily Jake sat on the porch, the letter open in his lap. The night was cool. A breeze stirred leaves along the concrete like whispers moving through time. He read it again. Then again. Each time, he waited for rage, sorrow, something. But all he felt was distance, not numbness. Closure. He folded the letter, lit the fire pit, and dropped it in. Flames danced quietly, erasing the past one flicker at a time. Emily was somewhere out there, searching for herself. And Jake? He had already found who he was. Right here. With Mason asleep inside. And the world finally still. Jake never liked attention. But when a veterans podcast reached out, asking to share his journey anonymously, he hesitated. Why would I open that door again? He asked Marissa over coffee. Because the silence helped destroy your marriage. Maybe your voice helps someone else escape before it's too late. He thought about that. 3 weeks later, the episode aired. Betrayed by blood, saved by choice. Jake didn't name Emily or Ethan. He didn't even explain every detail. But what he did do was speak. About love. About trust. About the DNA test that broke his heart but saved his soul. The episode went viral. Hundreds of thousands of views. Messages poured in from men and women alike. Your story saved me from staying. I cried. I thought I was alone. You made me feel like I could heal too. Jake didn't reply to most. He didn't need to. But one comment stood out. Heroes aren't always on the battlefield. Sometimes they're just the ones who choose not to stay broken. Jake smiled when he read it. He wasn't a hero. He was just a father who refused to let pain define the man he became. 3 months after the podcast, Jake stood at a military family conference in San Diego. He wore jeans and a pressed button-up. No uniform. No title. Just him. The room was filled with spouses, soldiers, survivors, some curious, some wounded, all listening. Jake took the mic, cleared his throat. I was lied to for 4 years. I raised a child I didn't create, but I created the father I became. He paused. A few nods. Some tears. I fought a war overseas. But the one that almost broke me was the one in my own home. He shared only the truth. No bitterness. No blame. Just lessons. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to carry someone else's weight forever. The room was quiet. Until a woman stood up and whispered, "Thank you." Then others followed. Applause wasn't loud, but it was honest. That night, Jake stood by the bay with Mason, watching the water shimmer. "Dad," Mason said, "did you help someone today?" Jake smiled. "I think so. Because sometimes legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you give away while you're still here." Jake wasn't looking for anything. That's why it caught him off guard. It started simple. Mason's teacher, Miss Hartley, stayed behind after parent night. She handed Jake a folder, smiled softly, and said, "He's strong. I can tell he gets that from you." He smiled back. "I'm just figuring it out as I go." She nodded. That's how all the good ones do it. It wasn't flotation. It was recognition. Two people who knew what it meant to rebuild from pain. Weeks passed. They spoke more. Coffee at school pickup. A shared walk to the parking lot. Laughter that didn't feel forced. Then, one day, she asked, "Would you like to grab dinner?" Just grown-up conversation. Nothing heavy. Jake hesitated. Not because he wasn't ready, but because he wanted to be sure. They went out on a Saturday. Casual place. He told her pieces of the story. She didn't pity him. She just listened. And when he told her about the day he got the DNA test, her only reply was, "That must have been a grief no one prepares you for." He looked at her and realized she got it. Not the gossip. Not the surface. The weight. And for the first time in years, Jake didn't feel like he was protecting himself from someone. He felt safe. Not from danger, but from being misunderstood. Jake sat in the pickup lane at Mason's school when his phone rang. A name flashed on screen he hadn't seen in months. Emily's sister. He hesitated, then answered. "Jake. I thought you should know. Emily gave birth last week. It was a boy." Jake was silent. "She's not keeping him. She's in a rehab center. Said she can't give him what he needs. She's signing over custody to the state." Silence again. "She asked me not to call, but I figured you deserved to know." Jake hung up gently. That night, he sat outside with Mason under the stars. The boy pointed to a cluster and said, "That one looks like a kite." Jake smiled. He didn't tell Mason about the baby, not because it was a secret, but because it wasn't his. Emily had used children to mask shame, to fill holes, to manipulate. She had taken one family down trying to fake another. And now, that child would start life in the system. Jake didn't feel joy in that, just sadness, and a whisper of finality. It was a regular Thursday when Jake walked past the courthouse he once sat inside for hours. No subpoenas now, no hearings, just the wind, clean and sharp against his skin. He paused outside the entrance. For a moment, his feet wanted to move, to go back in, to stare down the place where everything nearly broke him. But he didn't. He exhaled, because justice had already been served. Not in headlines,